From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi there, and welcome back to Chicago Newsroom here on Can TV. I'm Ken Davis. We know the facts now, don't we? Mayor Emanuel won big on Tuesday night. It isn't just that he got big numbers, totaling 55 to 44% all night long. It's that he won or came pretty close to winning in almost every part of the city. He lost the heavily Latino wards, of course, but not by that much. And the votes he picked up in the white and the black wards were impressive, I would say. And in the end, 320,000 Chicagoans demanded that Mayor Emanuel be returned to office. So you can argue that that's only a tiny fraction of Chicagoans and even a tiny fraction of registered voters. But hey, Rahm Emanuel won the election and he won it handily. Out in the wards, though, it was a little bit of a different story. A bunch of sitting aldermen got ushered out, including some of the more powerful ones. At least we think so. We'll be talking about that today. That can mean a lot on the local level, but of course it doesn't mean anything at the city council level, where the mayor is absolutely assured of his absolute command of the legislative branch, as should be. This is Chicago. And one more thing, some national media were starting to get interested when it looked like Barack Obama's former chief of staff might lose, and we're starting to see the narratives about whether this represented a huge rip in the Democratic Party, and the answer seems to be, nah, probably not. But this was an interesting election anyway, and here to help us figure it all out from the august Chicago Tribune, City Hall reporter Hal Dardick. Welcome back to the show, Hal.
Nice to be here.
And from the august NPR, David Schaper, NPR voice here in Chicago. Glad to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me, Ken.
So should we start with, you know what, forget all the local stuff. Start with this thing that this kind of national narrative. I found that really interesting, that suddenly a lot of the media was paying attention. Why, even the Daily Show did a segment on us last night. Right. But there was this whole thing about this could be the end for Hillary Clinton if this guy doesn't get reelected, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know that things went that far, but there were a lot of people making parallels to the battle in New York and the de Blasio victory there, and whether or not this could be a similar story of the sort of liberal progressive or left of liberal progressive wing of the party was going to make a stand here in Chicago as it did in New York and shift the party in a more leftward direction. The thing of that is, though, that we kind of always have these sorts of fights. I mean, maybe they're not exposed in this way or reported on in this way, but if you think of the 2008 presidential primary battle between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, that was someone who was more of a centrist, Hillary Clinton, versus the ultimate winner, President Obama, who at that time was viewed as left of Hillary.
At that time.
And you could go back, I mean, all the way, I saw somebody make a reference of one of the first presidential races I ever covered, which was in 1992, and Jerry Brown trying to give Bill Clinton a run for his money right here in Illinois. It was one of the last primaries that Clinton sewed it up. So it's certainly a narrative that's out there. I think what made this so much a national story is because of Mayor Emanuel's past in Washington, D.C. and his Washington connections, and the fact that he was such a huge figure in Washington, and the fact that he has struggled in the city in his first term as mayor. And part of it is because he brought a lot of his Washington attitude, his Washington shtick, the way he ran things in Washington and in the White House. He tried in Chicago, and it backfired to a degree on him. And the results were he was forced to do a runoff that I think a lot of people were not expecting.
Yeah. So Hal, is it fair to say that, as I just did, that our mayor won a pretty decisive victory? That he actually, he kind of turned things around.
Yeah, he did win a decisive victory in the end. I think the thing that makes it less than a resounding win is that he got forced into the runoff, as we've all noted. And because of that, he had to come out and change sort of his image through all that money that he had and all the advertising. He wore the V-neck sweater and tried to look warm and fuzzy. And
He'll never live that down.
And said, I know that I can be a little rough around the edges, and I can do better. In the later commercials, he said. And so you had a mayor that had to sort of try to rejuvenate himself because people viewed him as being cold and not considerate enough when he closed all the schools of the African American community, and that he wasn't simply this tough guy that came here to fix everything, but he was sensitive to the needs of the people. And I think Chuy Garcia pushed him in that direction. So while he won by a huge margin on Election Day, it was a hard-fought race, and he had to sort of rebuild his image.
Well, I found some interesting things reported in various places around the last couple of days here that I thought were really that were surprising to me. The fact that Dorothy Tillman and Conrad Worrell really turned out for Rahm Emanuel. Now, I had heard that. I knew that was going on, but it wasn't until I saw today that they're talking about Conrad Worrell had 4,000 people out on the street. I mean, Rahm Emanuel, contrary to what we were all saying, that Rahm Emanuel had no ground game, apparently he had one. We just didn't see it until right up at to the very end.
Yeah, well, he really did have no ground game on February 24th in the first election. He was just relying on the aldermen to get out their people, and he didn't have teams of people.
He saw how that worked.
And he saw how that worked. And that was another thing that he corrected in the second round. And so, he did get, and the interesting thing about the people you note is that both Tillman and Worrell were Harold Washington supporters, and Chuy was the guy that was part of the Harold Washington's team on the city council. So, he managed to get those people behind him, and they got a lot of people on the ground. He got the unions, the major unions at City Hall, SEIU, the Chicago Teachers Union also, asked me, had ground troops out working for Chuy. The mayor had all the workers' unions, the plumbers, the pipe fitters, the people that are getting a lot of money from his water upgrade program out working for him. And the aldermen that weren't in races this time in any of the 18 runoffs were able to put ground troops on the ground for the mayor. So he had a ground game, and that's part of why he won by such a large margin.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that there was this kind of narrative that many of us had bought into, that it's the Garcia forces that have the people on the ground, and Rahm Emanuel is still doing the air war. He's doing advertising.
Well, I think Hal hit the nail on the head when he said that in the first round, Mayor Emanuel relied, and I think to a large degree he must have done it in 2011 too, on the ground game that existed in the ward organizations, and thought that they would be able to come through for him. What I think he maybe failed to take into account is, while Mayor Daley did that as well, Mayor Daley ran those organizations, and his organization ran those organizations. And so
Mayor Daley didn't have to go to them to ask for help.
It was much more a part of the machinery. And in fact, I mean, it's really the machinery that elected Rahm Emanuel to his congressional seat. So therefore, Rahm had taken a much more hands-off approach. He ran the campaign, as he has done for congressional districts around the country, as he has, influenced in presidential runs, more of an air war on television, on talking points, trying to win, the day in the newspapers, trying to win the news coverage, but not managing the ground troops and the day-to-day organizations. The other thing I think that's important to remember is the Harold Washington coalition, as it was, doesn't exist anymore.
No,
and
absolutely.
that much of that infrastructure, that political infrastructure, was swallowed up by Mayor Daley's political operation. He, the critics say he co-opted them. The supporters of the mayor say he was opened his tent, and he was very inclusive, and he brought people to the table, and that's how he won his large support in the African American community. And I think that initially there was a little bit of a resistance or a hesitation from those in the African American community to really roll up the sleeves and go to work for Mayor Emanuel. And it came around in this runoff election where it didn't exist in February.
Were you going to say it?
Well, I think the great irony is that when he did get first elected to Congress, he had the Donald Tomzak army from the water department out there, and it was a real true patronage army.
Yeah.
And the days of patronage politics were supposed to be over, but they weren't under Daley. And he had the Hispanic Democratic Organization working for him. All those things were dismantled by court cases, as we know, prosecutions, first of their kind in the nation. And then the mayor came in and he managed to get out from under the Shackman decree by taking all the steps you're supposed to get rid of patronage at City Hall. So the irony is he killed off, in a lot of ways, and this is a good thing, you know, that this patronage sort of culture at City Hall. So he had to find another way to create ground troops. So it was a
And
whole
in
new
some
dynamic.
ways, it looks like he kind of mirrored what was going on with Garcia. A lot of union guys, a lot of people who are vested in trying to get their candidate going, so they put their own troops out on the street, but they're not city workers. I mean, some of them are obviously, but it's not the same, as you say, it's not the water department kind of patronage that we saw a generation ago.
No, these are folks who wanted to see him win because they believe it's in their interests to keep his policies going.
Yeah. I think the thing that was, to me, an underreported story was that Rahm Emanuel is, and always has been, a brilliant tactician when it comes to politics. I mean, that's how he got where he was in Washington. And this is not a guy who is going to suffer that defeat that he did on the runoff and not learn from it and immediately start rebuilding that infrastructure to get the things that he needed. And it's possible that we underestimated his ability to do that.
Well,
I think we. I think he never expected to be in a runoff, and I think that he underestimated what it takes to win a ground war in the city of Chicago, and that actually surprised me because of what you just said. He is a brilliant political tactician, and he, in a way, you would think should know better, but he apparently didn't and got forced into this. And I would have been very, very surprised had he not been able to carry the day in the runoff as a result.
and don't underestimate what you mentioned before, the air war, because he did win the air war. What he was able to do with the money that he had on hand, and that Chuy Garcia didn't have until much later, was he was able to get on TV and define his opponent and say, this guy's not right or wrong, prepared to take on the monumental financial tasks at City Hall. He doesn't have the executive experience. He doesn't have the chops. And that became the narrative of the story, whereas, Chuy later kind of gained strength too late with commercials painting him as a man of the neighborhoods, a man of the people who would listen to folks.
I can't tell you how many voters I talked to, and to a person, I can't remember anybody saying, I don't like that Chuy Garcia. I really like the guy, but the Mayor Emanuel supporters were, but I'm just not confident he would be able to balance the budget, that he would be able to do the job that we need done right now. And that's pretty much what carried the day. Now, the other side of that is, I met a ton of people who are Chuy supporters and even Emanuel voters who don't like him. And haven't liked what they've seen from him, and that's a really interesting sort of challenge. I think that the mayor still is going to have going forward, is that there's still an awful lot of people in this town who really don't like him or don't care for his style.
Well, it's one of those weird things that I know we've been talking about on this show for like a year. I mean, as the election has neared, and I just never wavered on saying, I don't care how many people say they can't stand him. They're gonna vote for him because their feeling is that he has the chops to do the job, whether he does or not. It's but that's the air war. That's the defining. He didn't only define Chuy Garcia as essentially a lightweight who couldn't do the job, but he reinforced in people's minds the fact that he is this incredibly competent financial manager who knows what we have to do and will do it. And then when you ask the question, well, yeah, but you've been in office for 4 years, we haven't seen much. I'm not refighting the election. That's okay. But that question never, that question got throttled, and it really never gained any traction.
Yeah,
So-
I think it's really interesting that Chewy could never get that message out too terribly effectively.
Right.
That, okay, maybe I don't have a plan, maybe I don't have all the answers, but neither does he. and it just kind of like, because it was defined so well and so early, it just never, he never really could communicate that message effectively.
Yeah, we did a piece basically saying, well, the mayor is relying on Springfield just like Chewy is relying on Springfield.
Right.
And if that doesn't happen, they're going to have to resort to this property tax. So yeah, there wasn't, in actuality, a lot of difference in their approaches to the budget. But the mayor, again, defined it. And he also, you talk about this idea of he's not that likable, and his commercials were kind of interesting, even his so-called mea culpa commercials, where he came and said, I know I can do better and so forth, in his fuzzy V-neck sweater. There was an undercurrent message in all those commercials too of, I may not be likable, but I may be an unpleasant guy, but I'm the unpleasant guy that you need, to sort of remove any offensive language from how I would describe
You
that.
can't handle the truth.
Well, and as much as we've talked about the organization things, I mean, the one of the key messages of this election is that the money does talk.
Yeah,
And
that is exactly
when
right.
you have a 4 or
Right.
5 to 1
Right.
spending advantage, especially in the tens of millions of dollars that Mayor Emanuel had, it is a huge mountain to climb. To
It may
overcome
not
that.
be able to do it all on its own, but I've been rich and I've been poor, and rich is better, or something along those lines. So, okay, enough of this mayoral stuff. Let's talk about these really interesting ward races that are going on. I took the liberty of giving you the latest printout from the Board of Election Commissioners as of just this morning, and we got a couple of wards, like 43. Where we're, what are we at, like 4 or 5 or 7 votes or something?
It's a cliffhanger as of last night at 5:30 p.m.
Lincoln Park, we're talking about.
Lincoln Park, yeah.
6 votes.
6 votes that Carolyn Vickery has over incumbent Alderman Michelle Smith. That was a really hard-fought race, a lot of accusations flying on both sides. And another interesting thing about that, we just talked about the mayor's race and these commercials about I know I have a difficult personality. Michelle Smith sent out a letter, said, I know I can be difficult, but I'm really trying to do my best, and I'm going to change. I'm going to listen to people more. So same sort of tactic, but there's also well over 1,000 absentee ballots that are still out in that race. A good portion of those will be counted relatively soon, and it can shift either way at this point.
I mean, there's no real way to say, in a broad sense, that the absentee ballots are gonna send it more to the incumbents or not. We just don't know in many cases.
Typically, it does go more for the incumbent because they know how to work those levers.
Right. I mean, you got to say, if you're one of those candidates in 43 right now, you got to be. Michelle Smith has got to be feeling like, I've got this, because there's like you say, there's 1,000 votes still to be counted, which is a whole new world that we're in now. This business of it ain't over until 2 weeks later.
Right. There's 4 races that are in that position. The other one that's really close is the 10th ward with Alderman Pope on the far southeast side of the city. And he's being challenged by Susan Sedlowski Garza out there, a Chicago school counselor, and the daughter of a revered steelworker union guy. And so you got that one that's super close, about 100 and. No, that's 86 votes.
86, I believe, was the last. Yeah.
And,
she's up 86.
But still a lot of, not quite as many, but a lot of absentees to be counted. You have in the 21st ward, you have incumbent Brookins, who is up by like 130 or no, actually he's up by a little more than that.
A little more than 200.
A little more than 200, but he'll probably prevail. And there's also the 31st ward.
The
and
31st,
this is interesting
now
because
that is
Brookins is of course the chairman of the Black Caucus, so that's an important race.
Right.
But Ray Suarez, longtime alderman, 25 years I think, and he is the vice mayor under Mayor Emanuel. And at this point, he's down by about 130 votes.
To
but
Millie Santiago, who is a newcomer to politics.
backed by unions, and I think that
I would say probably very well known in the Hispanic community because of her TV anchoring and all that, right?
right, yeah, Telemundo. She used to work for.
Yeah, but that's one of those races where, again, the incumbent has the advantage, and I think in that case a big advantage when you're talking about absentee ballots.
Yeah, there aren't quite as many out in that race, and I saw Alderman Suarez this morning, and he was kind of like, I don't know,
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's disrespectful to say, but I'm sure Dick Mell's phone is ringing this morning, and people are saying, "You have any retirement homes in your
right,
ward?"
and there are some retirement homes out in the 43rd, I understand.
Because he's an expert on getting votes at the last minute out of retirement homes.
Yeah, but I think the bigger story here of this race,
Dick.
the mayor's race got a lot of the national attention. I think the bigger story is that you had the Chicago Forward, this new thing, a super PAC that was out there working separately from the mayor, but on the mayor's behalf to elect the mayor and allies of his in the city council. And when all was said and done, a number of mayoral allies, 6 or 7 in the end, will have lost, and the Progressive Caucus will not have a majority by any means, but where they went into this race with 7 members, they may emerge with as many as 14. And these are the people that are highly critical of the mayor. So you may see a slightly different dynamic on the city council in the next 4 years, albeit the mayor will still have a majority.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking Verdoliak 29 kind of thing here, but it could be that the mayor would put an initiative forward and there would be significant heavyweight aldermen saying, nah, we want to see a little bit of change, we want to tinker around the edges.
Right. Well, and of course, you take a guy like Howard Brookins, assuming he'll prevail on the 21st, who will say, gee, I was a loyal backer of the mayor, and what exactly did it get me in the end?
My constituents weren't that crazy.
So I got to listen a little more to what's going on in my ward.
Well, I mean, that's another one that's fascinating too, is 41, where we saw a very, very loyal alderman to the mayor, and she was defeated by his name just escaped me.
Anthony Napolitano.
He's a fireman.
Right. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that what I think is interesting about the 41st is that a lot of those Napolitano voters still voted for Rahm Emanuel.
That's
right.
correct.
He did really well.
Because he did incredibly well in that ward.
Yeah.
And Napolitano, from everything I've seen, was backed. Well, strangely, was backed by SEIU, but also backed by the former alderman, who is a Republican, and there was a lot of Republican money in there. So Napolitano is an interesting guy. I mean, we don't really know.
And the Chicago Teachers Union, in the end, ended up endorsing him. This was a race where there was sort of a new coalition of CTU that joined SEIU, and ASME has been fighting the mayor for a long time. CTU joined in a much bigger way this time, and they all helped form this united working families. And they put a lot of the ground troops on the ground. They backed a certain number of these people, and in the ward races, they were largely successful. Of course, Mayor O'Connor had also the issue of O'Hare flame noise, and that didn't help at all. And the unions who had backed her the first time were upset with her because she didn't vote in favor of increasing the minimum wage.
Which she said was important because she had so many restaurants and.
Well, she has a catering business, she has a deli, and she was worried, being a border ward, that people would flee the city of Chicago and go across the border into the suburbs. So
very briefly, we have the possibility of what, about 10 or 12 people in this so-called progressive caucus. Then is that the number that
I think that's probably a good realistic estimate. That it does grow.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that they're all on the same page on a lot of issues.
No.
So it'll be interesting to see how it forms and coalesces, and what kind of committee assignments certain people get, because they won't control that necessarily. And what kind of a voice they end up having. I can't imagine that this is going to lead the mayor to all of a sudden invite Scott Waguespack to his budget meetings and his strategy sessions for council meetings.
But if he does and he's wearing a blue sweater, watch out.
Yeah, well, and it may also put a little pressure to a degree, or a lot of the strategizing may rest on the shoulders of Alderman Pat O'Connor, who was a floor leader under Mayor Daley and kind of kept that role under Mayor Emanuel. And it'll be up to him to kind of maybe pass out a few carrots and wield the stick occasionally to a certain alderman.
In the past, that was effective, and some of these people elected by the unions, like Lona Lane, who lost this time, became mayoral loyalists, whether it was Daley or Emanuel. So that's what this United Working Families group and also the Grassroots Illinois Coalition is going to try to do, is keep pressure on these people so that they stick with them.
Yeah. Okay, so in the minute we got left, I was one of the people who was saying publicly that I thought it was a good idea to vote against Rahm Emanuel in the primary because we needed to have him tested in a one-on-one. And we got our wish, and he won, and won fair and square in that primary. So the question is, will he be a better, more effective mayor now that he's been through this heat treatment?
He says so, but I think the proof will be in the pudding, so to speak. That's kind of a trite phrase, but we'll see what he does. He says he's going to listen more. He says that he heard people and that he's going to try and communicate his ideas better, but he's still got these gargantuan financial decisions to make, and in some ways the city does need someone that's just able to make a decision in the end. So we'll see whether he takes that sweater out to the restaurant and starts stabbing it with a knife, or
throws it on the backyard barbecue and torches it. Although I can't even imagine him at a backyard barbecue, but I think it's going to be interesting to see how he goes forward. Being who he is, I think that the mea culpa that he gave in this runoff election is big. I mean, we saw a lot of fumbling of the football from Mayor Daley, and never say I was wrong or I'm sorry, really, with hired truck scandal, the water department. I mean, it's so many things that were going on, and he kind of said, we've lost our way, or we've become arrogant, I'll be more responsive, blah blah blah. We never actually said him look at the camera and say, me too. And that's what Rahm did, and whether or not he just did it to get elected and it'll be forgotten next week, I don't know.
Was it just a tactic?
The challenges are huge, and it's like he said on election night. It's not everybody's going to be happy, but I will keep the door open. We'll have to see.
I think that we've managed to do what a lot of discussions have done in the last few days, which is talk for half an hour about the outcome of the election without talking about the thing that your editorial board wants us to be talking about, which is that we spend too damn much money. And so we'll have to do that on another show. But that is really going to be the issue, and it's going to be the only issue probably for the next couple of years as we face these $1 billion and $500 million deficits. But I think the solution is that the school board is going to create a new concept, a 3-year fiscal year starting this year. So they'll collect tax for not just
36 months,
but 36 months.
Wow.
All right, we're over time. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you so much, Hal Dardick from the Chicago Tribune, and thank you so much, David Schaper from NPR, for giving us some perspective today. And you, now that you have this perspective, have been watching Chicago Newsroom. It's a community service of CAN TV. Of course, you can see us right here on cable, but you can watch us anytime you like online at this address, and we do hope that you will, or listen to our podcast. Check us out there. Subscribe on iTunes. I'm Ken Davis, and we will be back next week with yet another conversation about things going on in Chicago. We're going to focus on education next week. Hope you'll join us. Thanks. Bye.